I was standing in front of my son Lucas's front door, my hands frozen around my car keys, every word from the living room cutting through the wood like a knife. It was Chloe, my daughter-in-law, her voice sharp and clear. "I hope the old lady spins out on a curve in this storm. That way the beach house is left to us and we don't have to wait anymore." And then, the sound that shattered my world. Lucas's laugh, my son, my only son, laughing at the possibility of me dying tonight. The air left my lungs. But I didn't make a sound. I didn't ring the doorbell. I didn't scream. I simply took a step back, then another, and another, until my feet found the path back to my car. The gifts remained in the back seat. $80,000 in stock options from my companies, wrapped in gold paper that now seemed obscene. The storm roared outside, but I no longer cared. I drove the 6 hours back home, crying in silence as the windshield wipers fought against the relentless rain. In that moment, I made myself a promise. 1 month later, not a trace of their perfect life would remain. My name is Eleanor. I am 63 years old. I own 3 textile import companies that I founded from scratch 35 years ago. Every morning, I wake at 5:30, make coffee in the Italian press I bought in Milan 15 years ago, and sit on my terrace to watch the sunrise over the ocean. I've lived alone for 8 years, since my husband, Robert, died of a massive heart attack one Sunday afternoon while watering the hydrangeas he loved so much. There were no goodbyes, no last words, just the brutal silence of a heart that stopped beating. Lucas was 27 then. He cried at the funeral. But 3 months later, he was already asking when I would sell the house, how much his father had left, if the companies were now solely mine. I justified it, thinking it was grief, his way of processing loss. How stupid I was. But my history with abandonment started much earlier. When I was 12, my mother left home without explanation, leaving a note on the kitchen table. "I can't take it anymore." That was all. My father became a silent man who drank whiskey every night in front of a turned-off television. I learned to cook, to clean, to survive. I learned that people leave, that you can't trust anyone to stay, and above all, I learned not to need anyone. That's why I built my own empire, to become someone who would never depend on anyone else. But with Lucas, it was different. He was my son, my blood. I thought that meant something. I thought a mother's love was unbreakable, even if it came from only one side. The first few years were perfect. Lucas was a sweet, affectionate boy who hugged me before sleeping and told me I was the best mom in the world. His father adored him. They'd football on Saturday mornings, built things together in the garage. We were a real family, or so I believed. After Robert's death, everything changed slowly, like a plant withering without you noticing until it's too late. Lucas started to distance himself. He canceled dinners, didn't answer calls, always had excuses. I told myself it was normal, that he was a grown man building his own life. But deep down, a part of me knew something was broken. And still, I kept giving. I kept being the mother who solves everything, pays for everything, forgives everything. He met Chloe 4 years ago at a business conference. She worked in the hotel's events department. She was pretty, self-assured, with that smile that seems genuine until you learn to see what's behind it. The first time I saw her, something in my stomach twisted, an intuition I ignored. Lucas seemed happy, seemed in love, and I just wanted to see him happy. At the introductory dinner, Chloe asked me about my companies with an interest that seemed flattering. She wanted to know how I started, how many employees I had, if I owned properties. I answered with pride, believing I finally had a daughter-in-law who valued hard work. How terribly naive. The wedding was intimate, held at my beach house on the coast. Chloe insisted it be there, saying it was the most beautiful place she'd ever seen, that she dreamed of marrying in front of the ocean. I paid for everything, of course. The catering, the flowers, the photographer, the music. $22. Zuzone in total. Lucas didn't even thank me. Chloe did, but now I remember how her eyes scanned every corner of that house as if calculating its value. After the wedding, the frequent visits began, always with some excuse. They wanted to spend the weekend, needed to rest from city stress, missed the sound of the waves. I felt happy to have them close. I prepared their favorite meals, washed their sheets, made sure they had everything they needed. I became the hostess of my own home, and they became the permanent guests who never quite left. Then the favors started, small ones at first. Chloe asked to borrow money for a digital marketing course, $3,000 she never paid back. Lucas needed help with a down payment on a new car, $8,000 he'd pay back as soon as he closed a deal. The deal never closed. Then it was the apartment. They lived in a modest place downtown, but Chloe complained constantly about the noise, the neighbors, the lack of space. One day, during a meal at my house, she dropped the comment casually. "Eleanor, I saw a beautiful apartment in the residential district. It's perfect for us. But the rent is a little high, $15,000 a year. If only we could afford it." She looked at me with those abandoned puppy eyes, and I, like the fool I was, said yes, that I would pay the rent for the first year just to help them get settled. 1 year turned into 2, then into 3. Every time I mentioned it was time for them to take charge, Lucas told me he was going through a tough time at work, that he just needed a few more months. And I caved. I always caved. Chloe's mother, Sandra, appeared on the scene in the second year of the marriage. A 50-year-old woman with a smile as fake as a $3 bill. She arrived with 2 suitcases and the promise of staying only a few weeks while she found a job. The weeks turned into months. She lived in my beach house without paying anything, ate from my refrigerator, used my utilities. Every time I visited, I found the house a mess. Damp towels on the sofa, dirty dishes in the sink, empty wine bottles on the terrace. When I gently mentioned to Chloe that perhaps her mother could help with cleaning, she looked at me as if I had insulted her. Eleanor, my mom is going through a hard time. She just got divorced. She needs support, not criticism. And I once again, shut up. I swallowed my discomfort and let a stranger take over the space I had built with my own hands. But what really should have alerted me were the questions. Chloe started asking them more frequently, always with that casual tone that pretended to be innocent. Eleanor, is the beach house in your name, or was it also in Robert's name? Do you have a will? It's important, you know, at your age one never knows. Are the companies registered only under your name, or does Lucas have a share? I answered with honesty, without thinking that every word was information she was filing away, information that would later be used against me. The drive back home from their house, with the storm raging and their words echoing, felt like an eternity. But when I finally pulled into my driveway, a cold resolve had settled over me. I was no longer the foolish giving mother. That woman had died on their doorstep. I called Arthur, my lawyer, first thing the next morning. He'd handled my affairs for 20 years, seen me through thick and thin. Arthur, I said, my voice steady, I need to change everything. My will, my trusts, all financial arrangements concerning Lucas and Chloe. I want them out of my life, financially and physically. I recounted the previous night's events, my voice betraying no emotion. Arthur listened patiently, his silence a testament to his understanding. We can do all this, he said finally. But we need to be strategic. If we act too fast, they might get scared and try some desperate move. If we act too slow, we give them time to plan a response. I propose the following. Today we draft the new documents. Tomorrow, first thing in the morning, I personally take care of the legal notices. We cancel the payments so that they become effective at the end of this month, in 3 days. That gives them enough time to realize something changed, but not enough to react effectively. And the locks? I asked. A locksmith can go tomorrow to the beach house. I also suggest you install security cameras, because if Chloe has copies of the keys, she might try to enter before realizing they no longer work. I nodded. All of this made sense. It was logical, rational, perfect. We worked for hours. Arthur had his laptop, and I had access to all my financial and legal documents. We drafted a new will where Lucas received exactly what the law obligated, the minimum, which in our state was a nominal amount to prevent contestation. The rest I divided among charities that helped older women who were victims of financial abuse. The irony didn't escape me. We created an irrevocable trust for the beach house, naming those same organizations as beneficiaries. I signed authorizations to cancel all services and automatic payments related to Lucas. We drafted a formal letter removing him from any position in my companies. We prepared an eviction notice for Sandra, giving her 30 days to abandon the property, which was more than the law required, but which Arthur insisted was prudent to avoid legal problems. When we finished, it was 4 p.m. I had signed more documents that day than in the entire previous year, but every signature felt like recovering a piece of myself. There is something else, Arthur said before leaving. You need to prepare yourself emotionally for what is coming. When they realize what you have done, they are going to react. They will probably try to manipulate you again. They are going to cry. They are going to beg. They are going to play the victim. Lucas is going to say you are a bad mother, that you are abandoning them, asking how you can do this to them. Chloe will probably try a different approach, perhaps veiled threats, perhaps dramatic pleas. You have to be prepared to stand firm. You can do it. I looked him in the eyes. This man had known me for 20 years. He had handled my divorce when my first husband was unfaithful before meeting Robert. He had been there when Robert died. He had seen my weakest moments. But the woman looking at him now was not the same one he had known. I can do it, I said with a certainty coming from some deep place I didn't even know existed. I am no longer the woman I was a week ago. That woman died in front of that door last night. The one who remains has no patience for lies. Arthur left and I stayed alone in my house, surrounded by silence. My phone had rung 20 more times during the day. Lucas, Chloe, even Sandra. I hadn't answered a single call. The voicemails had evolved from feigned worry to barely disguised irritation. The last one, from Chloe, said, Eleanor, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this is ridiculous. Lucas is very upset. You canceled on his birthday without even notifying us. The least you can do is give an explanation. The least I can do. What an interesting concept. For 4 years I had done the maximum. I had given everything. I had paid for everything. I had forgiven everything. And they had taken every single thing as if it belonged to them by right, without gratitude, without love, without even basic respect. Now I was finally going to do the minimum. And the minimum was exactly nothing. That night I slept better than I had slept in years. I didn't dream. I didn't wake up at 3 in the morning thinking about what I had lost. I slept deeply like someone sleeps who has finally made a decision they won't regret. I woke up at 6, made my coffee, sat on the terrace and watched the sunrise over the sea. The sky was clear after the storm. Everything looked clean, fresh, new. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something akin to peace. It wasn't happiness. I was still too hurt for that. But it was something better than pain. It was resolve. It was certainty. It was knowing that I had stopped being a victim and had become someone regaining her power. Monday dawned cold and clear. I got up early, dressed in a pearl gray suit that had always made me feel professional and in control, and headed to my main office downtown. I had meetings scheduled with the managers of my 3 companies, not to talk about Lucas, but to make sure everyone was aware that he no longer had any authority or access to confidential information. In the 9-line meeting, with the 5 main managers sitting around the conference table, I got straight to the point. Effective today, Lucas is no longer part of this organization in any capacity. His access to systems, his corporate email, and any privileges he had are revoked immediately. If he tries to obtain information or make requests in my name, you must contact me directly to verify. Understood. There were looks of surprise, but no one asked questions. I had been running these companies for 35 years with a steady hand. They knew that when I spoke in that tone, it was not time for questions. At 10, Arthur called me. It's done. The notices were sent this morning by certified mail. The bank confirmed that all automatic transfers are canceled. The last rent payment that went out was this month's, so they have until the end of the month before the landlord notifies them. The additional credit cards were blocked an hour ago, and the locksmith is at the beach house now, changing the locks and installing cameras. A strange calm washed over me. It was done. The first domino had fallen. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and increasingly frantic messages from Lucas and Chloe. They couldn't understand why their credit cards were declined, why the rent hadn't been paid, why Lucas's company email was deactivated. Their confusion quickly turned to anger. Lucas called me, his voice shaking with fury, accusing me of sabotaging his life. Chloe left a voicemail, her tone venomous, threatening legal action, demanding an explanation. I didn't answer, I just listened, detached, to the unraveling of their carefully constructed illusion. Then came the letter. A week later, a thick envelope arrived from Lucas's lawyer, full of accusations and demands. He claimed I was mentally unstable, that I was being manipulated, that I was disinheriting him unjustly. He threatened to contest the will, to expose me, to ruin my reputation. I forwarded it to Arthur, who simply chuckled. Standard procedure. We anticipated this. Don't worry, Eleanor, we have everything covered. The eviction notice for Sandra was served. She called me, screaming, crying, accusing me of being heartless. I hung up. The beach house, once a symbol of family gatherings, became a fortress of my newfound independence. I installed a new security system, hired a property manager, and spent more time there myself, enjoying the ocean breeze, the quiet solitude. Lucas and Chloe eventually moved out of the apartment, unable to pay the rent. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they were struggling, moving into a smaller, cheaper place. Lucas had lost his job, his reputation in tatters after word got out about his sudden removal from my companies. Chloe was working odd jobs, her dreams of a lavish life shattered. Did I feel guilty? Sometimes. In the quiet moments, a pang of sadness would hit me. He was my son. I had loved him fiercely. But then I would remember Chloe's words, Lucas's laugh, and the cold, calculated greed that had festered beneath their smiles. I asked myself if I had failed him as a mother. Had I given him too much? Never taught him the value of work? Was it my need for love that created a monster? Probably there is truth in all that. But I have also come to understand that at some point children become adults, responsible for their own decisions. Lucas chose to lie, manipulate, plan. Those were his choices, not mine. I cannot carry the guilt of his decisions forever. I did the best I could with the emotional tools I had. I wasn't perfect, but I didn't deserve what they did to me either. The letter Lucas sent remains in my desk. Sometimes I take it out and read it again. I look for some sign of genuine change, some indication that he finally understood. And maybe he understood. Maybe suffering transformed him into someone different, someone capable of real regret. But even if that is true, it doesn't change my decision. Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. I can let go of the hate without opening the door to him again. I can wish for him to find his way without being the one to guide him. That is the hardest lesson I have learned. That loving someone does not mean sacrificing yourself for them infinitely. That sometimes the bravest love is the one that sets boundaries and keeps them even when it hurts. I turned 64 last month. I celebrated with my employees, with Arthur and his wife, with some friends from the pottery club I've been getting to know. It was an intimate dinner full of genuine laughter, interesting conversations, people who are in my life because they want to be, not because they need something from me. There were no extravagant gifts or grand gestures, just good food, good wine, and better company. And when I returned home that night, with Luna, my dog, waiting for me at the door, wagging her tail, I realized that for the first time in years, I felt complete, not for what I had but for what I had let go. The will remains as I drafted it with Arthur. Most of my estate will go to organizations that help older women, animal shelters, educational programs for young female entrepreneurs. Lucas will receive his nominal bequest, the bare minimum to avoid a lawsuit, and not a penny more. It is enough so he cannot claim he was disinherited unjustly. But it is not remotely close to what he would have had if things had been different. If he had been the son I thought he was. If he had loved me as I loved him. But it wasn't like that. And these are the consequences of his choices. Sometimes when I walk on the beach at sunset with Luna running ahead, chasing seagulls she's never going to catch, I think about the irony of it all. They wanted me to die so they could have my money. But by trying to speed up that process, by revealing their true intentions, they lost everything long before my death. They destroyed themselves with their own greed. I didn't have to do much, really. I just had to stop holding them up, stop rescuing them, stop allowing them to use me. Gravity did the rest. Without my money as a cushion, without my connections as a safety net, they fell fast and hard. And although I don't rejoice in their suffering, I don't feel guilty about it either. They sowed the wind and reaped the whirlwind. As the saying goes, I have learned that the loneliness I feared so much is not as terrible as I thought. In fact, there is a huge difference between being alone and feeling lonely. I was surrounded by family for years and felt deeply lonely, used, invisible, except for what I could provide. Now I am alone most of the time, and I feel more accompanied than ever. I have myself, I have my integrity intact, I have my self-respect recovered, and it turns out that is enough. More than enough. It is everything. I don't know what the future holds for Lucas. I hope sincerely that he finds a path toward becoming a better person, that he learns from this, that he grows, that someday he is capable of genuine relationships based on real love and not materials interest. But that is his journey, not mine. I already did my part. I raised him, fed him, educated him, gave him opportunities. The rest depended on him and he chose the path he chose. Now he must live with those choices as we all must live with ours. As for me, I keep moving forward. Each day is a little lighter than the last. The pain has become a scar, present but not bleeding. And I have discovered something surprising. Life after 60, after betrayal, after letting go of everything you thought defined your existence, can be extraordinarily good. It can be yours in a way it never was before. And that freedom, that absolute ownership of your own life, is priceless. It is worth more than any beach house, more than any company, more than all the money they coveted. It is worth everything.